Okay, let me share my screen. Share. So I'll pull up the book and I'll do a brief overview and then walk through some of these steps. So I guess we're going from zero to hero on Leo and Aleo instructions. Zero to hero with Leo and Aleo instructions. So the book was sparse. It's a very rough draft. I just typed it up in a few hours. But there are official resources which I pulled from to build the chapters. The big one is Aleo Developer Docs. It's kind of like the official point, but a little lagging in as far as what is under development in GitHub. The most up to date information about the languages are on Aleo HQ's GitHub page. Um, there's ARCs, which are engineering requests for comment. They talk about changes and features to the languages. And then you can also see current support on the GitHub Aleo HQ Leo and GitHub Aleo HQ Aleo, which is the Aleo SDK projects. There's links to the IDE plugins, which you'll need to see syntax highlighting and things like this that make it easier to develop the language. You'll know when you have a typo because it'll call that out in your code. Aleo Studio, which is similar to Visual Studio Code but developed specifically for building and deploying Aleo applications, is an alpha. I tested it. It may or may not work for you. There are some breaking changes going on, and later release will probably fix those. And then there's also, if you're interested in learning more, I'm sure you're all aware of and familiar with the Aleo talks and other resources on Aleo's website. So I won't open each of those, but you can find those links in that ebook. This series, this session, we'll try to get everyone set up with tooling. That means the programs required to program in Leo and Aleo. And I can take a moment to discuss which each of those are. The main thing you need is a Rust compiler and a cargo package manager. These are tools within the Rust programming language in Aleo and Leo, and the instructions for the blockchain are built in Rust. Rust is a language that's meant to make it hard to make programming mistakes. You have to be very specific, and it won't actually compile your program if there are logical errors in it. There are certain types of errors that can get through, but they're more found in practice and not actually due to a mathematical problem in your program usually. So the Rust compiler is very basic. You'll use the cargo command. You can do cargo update stable, and that will get you the latest version of the cargo package manager. And there's also something called version control software. Version control software lets developers work on software projects in tandem, and then whenever they change the same file, if there are conflicts, it helps them to resolve those and get the newer version of the software released while multiple cooks are in the kitchen, so to speak.
There's two versions of it.
It lets you collaborate over software.
You have the command line, and then you have the graphical user interface on GitHub, and uses like that. So you can start out using GitHub, but it's good to know the command line as well, which we'll go over.
Right. So you can go to the GitHub website and download packages, but the quickest way is to use the commands. The only command you really need to learn to start is clone, and that's like checking out the code from the website and putting it in a folder on your computer to work with it. Another concept is called your working directory, and that's your changes to the code, which may or may not be up to date with the changes. They may be ahead of or behind the changes of the latest release of code on GitHub. Leo and Aleo are the two package managers. They give you some commands to build new projects, and scaffold, which means put the files in place that need to be in place with sensible default values. You can also get other Leo programs with these package managers. So it's meant to be something like, if you're familiar with JavaScript, the Node package manager, where people publish their packages. In the future, people will be able to publish their Aleo programs, and you'll be able to use these package managers to download the code for those, and even incorporate it into your own projects. An IDE. This sounds complex. An integrated development environment. It just means it's a fancy editor. Examples are Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, and IntelliJ, either PyCharm or Ultimate. There's a bunch of IntelliJ uh, versions supported. There's a lot of versions of that software, but they all kind of use the same engine, and the plugin is supported for some of the older versions. I know there was an update released recently, and the plugin hasn't been listed as supporting that updated version of IntelliJ. So, for the sake of uh, clarity and ease, we're going to go with the Visual Studio Code for this demo. So, I'll launch that in a moment. And then the resources linked to the Leo plugin. You'll need to install the Visual Studio Code extension from Aleo HQ. I believe it's developed by or maintained by an employee over at Aleo named Colin. And that plugin will give you language support so that you can see problems with your Leo programs and problems with your Aleo programs. And then the package manager will be using the terminal. You'll type commands that will compile and run your programs when you make them. So I have steps here.
Wait,
I'll pull
hang
up.
on. Is everybody following along? Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, I was going to go right into installing Git. And to do that, I'm going to pull up a terminal. So also, I wanted to know your operating systems. Is everyone, I would imagine there's some Ubuntu users, maybe some Mac users or Windows users. But the instructions, if you go to the pages related to each section, the websites for installing Git have instructions for each operating system, and the website for installing Rust has instructions based on the operating system it detects when you visit that website. So for some of this, it'll vary slightly different. For example, on Mac OS, you can use a package manager called Brew, similar to Cargo, similar to Leo and Aleo's package managers, but you would just type Brew install Git, and it would install the latest version of Git that way. Let me see. This isn't gonna get. Yeah, I guess it is gonna get recorded. So if you go to I think it's getscm.com. This is what you would see here, and the latest release you can download for your operating system. It's going to be a command line tool. So I included on the book, I included a link to a cheat sheet too. The cheat sheet gives you kind of like sections broken down into what you would need to do, and then the git command that might help you accomplish that. So if you have any questions, this is kind of like a reference sheet that can tell you the specific command you're looking for, and then you can look at the documentation from Git SCM on how that command works. I'll have to warn you that the documentation on Git is a little dense. You might fare better searching Google for instructions on common things.
Yeah, Git is rather it gets it. It's simple to use the basics like Git pull pulls your updates, but it gets complex. So don't get frustrated with it. You really only need to Git pull, Git push, Git clone are really the only three commands that you'll be using.
Yeah,
So you get more in depth and
Git checkout. You might want to start with. There's a concept called branches. And a branch is just like a folder with a version of the code in it, and you can check out and you can pass a -b and type a name for a new branch, and it starts on the same code as the one you were on initially, but gives you a new one that you can change, and later you can merge it. It's called merging the branch with a pull request, and that will share your code with the other developer's code. Um, we get the book back up here in the terminal. Um, Git is it's the basic tool for getting the Alio package manager and installing it from source code. Eventually, I'm sure they'll have versions you can just download and drop in your applications folder or save to your My Programs in Windows. Um, but the next part would be the programming language used for installing the Alio packages, and this is called Rust. It was geared towards being reliable and efficient software for helping you build reliable and efficient software. Um, and Leo, Alio, the Snark VM, and Snark OS projects are built with Rust because it builds very reliable, efficient, and fast compiled software. You may have heard of other languages like JavaScript and Python. Those aren't compiled. Rust is more like C++, in that you spend some time when you write the software after you're done building bytecode and compiling it for various architectures. That means like your CPU instructions will be able to understand it. And the benefit of this is that it takes a long time to compile, but once you run it, it runs much faster. Languages like Python and PHP, JavaScript, those are interpreted and they're virtualized. They run in an environment that does that compilation, but in real time. So it's a bit overhead for those languages.
Yeah, the benefit with Rust is they say if it compiles, it runs. So if you compile it, in theory, you shouldn't have any errors. Whereas Python, you have to run it under different conditions to see if an error is going to show up.
Another benefit is that it's forward compatible, so any updates to Rust will not break your program. Um, so to get that, there's an easy website to follow the instructions on. Rustlang.org tools install. There's a free book on this website if you're interested in learning Rust, but it's a little bit more advanced. It's kind of like one of the up and coming but most technical programming languages that gives you the ability to do pretty much anything you can think of. To get the language, you have to use a program called curl. Curl is just like a command line web browser. It's not a browser. It doesn't let you read the website, but it lets you pass URLs. And in this case, it's getting a script and passing it to the shell. On Windows, there's other installation methods you would follow that are more familiar, like getting an exe. This flag here just means it's using HTTPS protocol. It's using TLS version 1.2. This S flag just says it's gonna accept the SSL certificate, and then it gets the subdomain sh.rustup.rs. And I guess before you run this, you could look at that script to make sure it's something you want to run on your computer. But they just pipe it into the shell, which just runs the commands in the script that set up the package manager. You'll see I can do this. I think it won't complain even though I have Rust already, but you would do this. Select the default option. It's going to download all of the dependencies, and you can see it's about 100, maybe 200 megabytes, and some other dependencies that it's getting. So Rust C is the compiler, Cargo is the package manager, Clippy and Rust Docs, Rust Standard Library. These are other things that it uses. So no, it'll tell you to configure your current shell. You can run this source command, or you can just close your terminal and open your terminal again. But it gets Cargo's environment set up for your system. So you can do cargo-version. This will tell you have the latest version and what that version is. We can compare those versions if you have issues. running some of the examples that we'll get into in later sessions. Um, but
Yeah, a
this,
lot of time when your code breaks, just updating to the newest version will solve the issue, and other times updating it will break it. It shouldn't. The changes shouldn't cause breaks with Rust and Leo, but sometimes just updating it is all you need to do if you're getting errors.
um, let's see, cargo version, Git version to confirm you have Git. It's a similar flag. Um, and I think, there's different terminal applications for Ubuntu. Mac comes with this default terminal. Windows has the command line and PowerShell. I'm not familiar as much with Windows as I am with Ubuntu and Mac. Um, let's see. The next step, I think, would be cloning the projects from AlioHQ. So let's go on to GitHub. This is the official Alio set of repositories. A repository is a code project that you basically download, and it puts in a folder where you specify the command. So we want Leo and we want Alio. We'll start with Alio because opcodes um, are a little bit more are better supported and are a little more fundamental. Leo compiles ultimately into Alio, and then Alio compiles into instructions for the network. Um, let's see. So it's just called Alio. You can get there just by typing Alio HQ/Alio. I like to go to this code button, and it has some options. I use SSH. It requires you to upload your public key to your GitHub profile to use that. Another option is to use HTTPS. So you can pick either of the formats.
GitHub CLI automates a lot of the steps. That's what I use.
Yeah, so I'm just the old school guy. I'll use any of these options should work. If it doesn't work, you can download the zip. Um, if you have trouble installing Git, you can download the zip. I don't think you necessarily need Git. It's just very useful to update versions. You can do one command and it'll get the latest version from this. So I'm going to make folder, go in there. It'll have our exercises eventually. I'm going to publish something like this into a repository. But for now, I'm going to run that command I copied from GitHub. It's just the address part. So we want to say the command for Git, which is Git, and then clone the address, and then the name of the folder. And if you omit the name of the folder, it'll use the part before .git. So this folder is called Alio. When I clone this, it clones into Alio. It shows you some stuff about how it fetches the data. And then if you do a directory listing, you'll see an Alio folder. And you can cd into Alio now. And you can see it has some things. It has a lock. It has a toml. These are the files that tell Cargo Package Manager about the package itself. And since it's a cargo Rust program, you would use cargo install --path, and this is just telling it what to install. And you could do this from outside of the folder, and you could type path alio, but here I'm just going to type dot, which is the commands from the page here.
The dot just means current folder.
current
That's
current
shorthand for
current directory, and dot means previous directory above this directory. So it's the path is gonna evaluate to the current folder, like Josh said. We'll install this. It gets version 0.31. It updates your crates index. Cargo packages are called crates, I guess. And now it's fetching everything that's published to the crates IO index regarding this Alio version 0.3.1. So this will take some time. It's getting 31,941 bytes or something like similar to that. And it's only at 12,000. Um, So it will go then, and then I guess we just have to be patient for this. The similar package for Leo um, is the same. You would do a git clone git at github.com Leo or alio hq/leo.git, and it gets Leo. So it's nice. The naming convention with SSH is that the website is the server, the @ is the user. In this case, Git has a global Git user that it uses your public key with, and the GitHub user is after the colon. The slash separates the project name, and .git just specifies it's a Git repository. It's like an extension on that. And then the other way to do it would be with the HTTPS address, the website, instead of the HTTP instead of SSH. Those are just two protocols that it uses to download. So we can ls this, and it's another cargo package. Go back to this one. It's still downloading, but it's at 99%. So let's watch that. This is for Alio. It got Snark VM. It's getting in some of the dependencies for the Alio SDK. It's building these, so it's actually compiling now. It's compiling Rust's programs. And some of these are third party, some of these are developed by Alio, but they are dependencies because they implement features that they make use of for Snark VM and for Alio and for the commands that it gives you. It's not a crime to install two at the same time, so I'll do cargo install -- path dot. Now let's see, installing Alio version 0.31. I thought I installed that over here. So I went into the wrong directory. So you might get an error like this. And in most cases, what I did for this was just retry the command and see if you get the same error. It says the license is either missing or it doesn't match the expected string. So the build is looking for a license for the Leo compiler. Let's try it one more time. Let's do a get pool, get status, rmrf Leo. That was the Leo project I accidentally cloned. Get status. I just deleted a folder that I accidentally added into this Alio folder. It says my branch is up to date with Origin Testnet 3. If you know about branches, Testnet 3 is the current branch they're working on. Mainnet will probably have a different branch eventually. And so the other thing you can do is git log. You can see yesterday, Colin Chen updated the Testnet 3 branch, changing the version for a new release.
So, and you have to hit Q to get out of that.
Yeah, Q, yeah, it's it's using them or VI, and it's when you get log, it has a colon here, and you can do things like you can type slash and you can search, and it'll take you and highlight the search result. You can hit Q, and that'll exit, or you can hit the arrow keys and it'll scroll through the log. So this is going with Leo. If we can't get Alio to work, that's okay. We can use Leo. They have both similar features. And when you do a new project, it does a hello world type, a hello Alio type project with code for you that you can compile and run from the get-go. So cargo, I think you can't install cargo side by side. You can't run one version of cargo with another version, so we'll let this finish.
Do we need the same process with Windows system?
It's similar. You can get the instructions on GitHub. Um, let's see. I think search for install. Um,
There's Windows 64-bit.
here's the executable for Rust. It's easier to install than it is with the command line. And then I think you still have to install Aleo this way that I'm showing you. That you would use GitHub to get the project, and you would use, once you have Rust, it'll give you the cargo command on Windows, and you'll be able to run this cargo install path dot, and that's where you would find the instructions. 2.2 of the GitHub project for Aleo or for Leo are both in each repository and have these instructions. And then when we
I
get
think you want to use PowerShell for Windows, right?
yeah, it might be PowerShell, it might be the command line. Um, you would have to experiment with that. I think there's on-screen instructions. You would want probably the x86 64-bit executable. But it's untested because I have no Windows system to test that on. I might have to use my spare solid state drive and put a dual boot together. But back to the terminal. Let's see. So now it's building the Leo binary, and that might take the most time.
And so once you have these steps done, you'll be able to run your your node just with Aleo commands. Then, so this is how you would set it up on your if you want to use a local laptop or you have a server.
So to run the nodes, there is the same steps, correct? As I
Yeah,
understand.
you have to install. I think it's Snark VM, but it's this is how you do it, and then it's a we're gonna go over it later on. It's very easy. It's just but you have to do it. I believe on Windows you have to do it through command line too. On Mac and Linux you have to do command line.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, it's Snark VM that you run for a node, right, Andrew?
Um, Either Snark VM, I think Snark OS makes it easy and has all the things like Snark VM included. But Aleo and Leo come with development nodes that are like a single node, um, which you can deploy a contract to, and it it accepts whatever commands you send to the blockchain. It's not like a validator has to go through validating that on your system. So you can build programs and you can run programs and try them out um, without actually needing to spend and invest in a server or a heavy computer to run your own node. It's currently being incentivized to test running nodes. So if you want to participate in testnet incentives, it would be something different. The programming aspect is in process. They're working on the language and making it a little bit more what's called expressive. It means some of the things that you can do more advanced features with by typing less code are still works in progress with Leo. Um, but we're still able to do examples like voting, tallying, simple games like tic tac toe, and we can choose some of those to go over in the rest of the series. So it looks like Leo is installed. So you would test that by typing Leo help, and you get the splash page, the help, You can build, clean, deploy this help command, new, and run. So, and these are flags you can pass, like -H is also help. Build will run your program. Clean will clean up the Alio code that it built while it was building your program and start from a fresh slate. And then deploy would send it to your development node or potentially to testnet. Help is this message. New would set up the files and the steps necessary to get new projects going for a new program. And run lets you just build and run at the same time. You can build and then you can run, or you can just type run. And
So normally you would do Leo new, and that'll give you the boilerplate to start your. You'll do that at the beginning of every project.
yeah, so we would just do Leo new hello, and it creates an Alio program hello. We can list the directory. Now we have the hello folder. I'm going into the hello folder. We can list it again. It makes a README. It makes a build folder. This is where it puts the Alio instructions and things that it gets from source. It has a program.json. That's kind of like the manifest that has your account keys and the name of your program. I think it has a compute key, not an account key. It has something that's tied to your account, but other people can use. And then it has inputs. Inputs are a file .n, which has the name of the function and its arguments. So argument A and argument B and values for those. And when you do Leo build, it takes these inputs and passes them to the function that it executes.
U32 is a type. It means it's an unsigned integer of 32 bits.
Yeah, it's easier to understand with unsigned integer of 8 bits. It means the binary has 8 zeros or ones, and depending on the value of the 0 or 1 and the math you do in base 10 instead of, or in base 2 instead of base 10, it comes out to a base 10 number.
Yeah, so a U8 would have 0 to 255, and if you go to 256, it rolls back to 0.
Yeah. A lot of that is very primitive data types. You know, unsigned the U means unsigned means it can't be negative. There's also I32, which is an integer, which could be negative. So one thing that's not supported in Leo right now are decimals. There's some concepts we'll get into in the later series about how the language works and what it means. But right now, I wanted to get everyone able to get these two programs installed, the SDKs. Alio will make a slightly different folder when you do Alio.
What are you running?
This is Alio cargo install path for the Alio package.
Oh, okay.
So in the first tab I have Alio, and the second tab I have Leo. And as soon as this finishes, I'll go into the LeoLearners folder I made, and I'll do Alio new as well, and we'll have two folders to open up in Visual Studio Code.
Any special requirements for PC, or it doesn't matter?
So these are all Rust programs. It's downloading from a Rust package manager, and then they just run on any architecture. So you may probably find yourself best suited for Visual Studio Code. I think it's free. And once you get Alio commands set up, there's a terminal option in Visual Studio Code, which you can use, and you can just type Leo build whenever you write your program, or Alio build if it's opcode instructions. And I'll show you that. We'll still have time to do that today. But I think for Windows, I would recommend just following the instructions on Aleo HQ's GitHub page for the Aleo and the Leo packages on how to install them from source. Installing from source sounds technical, but really it's just running that one command after you download the software, and the software is the source code. Eventually, they'll probably have releases, and they'll make releases for Windows, and you may be able to get the command in an exe or something of that nature. Um, but what I'm showing you here is it's pretty universal, I believe, with Rust programs. Another nice thing about doing it from code is you can trust that sometimes they have checksums, signatures of the files and things like that, and these are all being checked as it compiles this. So you don't have to worry about someone swapping the correct version with a malicious version or something of that nature. With a man in the middle attack or something like that, which is rare. Okay, so now it's getting Snark VM, and then it will get Aleo. Or no, it's working on Aleo, and that's the last step. Let me see. It looks like it's done. Okay, so now we would have Aleo help, and the help commands look almost identical. We have Aleo account. So this is one way to make an account. It'll give you a private and public key. Build, clean, deploy, new, run, update. This one has update. I'm not sure if it gets the, you can do Aleo update. I think it just runs the same commands we just ran.
I think it's like cargo update. It just updates the package.
Yeah. And it'll tell you when you run Aleo build that there's a new version. So let's do that. Let's do Aleo new. But created hello Aleo. There's some rules about this. That has to be lowercase. You can only use underscores. And I'm going to move that up a directory and then go up a directory. So now we have Aleo, we have Leo. You might want to keep those in a separate directory from your projects, or you can keep them in the same if you can keep them apart. But hello is a Leo language. So I'm going to remove it and do Leo new. Hello Leo. And we have hello Aleo now and hello Leo. And so now I can open Visual Studio Code. Let's see if I can get this.
And VS Code is free. It's from Microsoft. So you can link your GitHub to the VS Code. Do you want to go into the extension and show them what the extension looks like?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm just trying to get into our LeoLearners folder. So let's start with Aleo instructions. So the Aleo instructions are a little simpler. It doesn't have a source folder. It just has main.aleo, program.json, and readme. VS Code makes this folder. You can also hide that later. It's supposed to be hidden, but I have it showing in my system. Main.aleo starts with a program called hello Aleo. And these are Aleo instructions. So they're commands and it's functional. So these are like functions almost. They're instructions. And the numbers here are R0, R1, are like memory registers. They're like variables where you can store an input. It's a type of argument to the function, meaning like when you call hello, you're required to provide two unsigned 32-bit integers or unsigned 32-bit numbers. And
in Leo, they would have names, so you wouldn't have R0. You would have a variable name, but in instructions, it's R0, R1, R2.
Yeah, so you have to kind of keep track in memory and remember which one was which is more advanced. But support for this is a little bit better than for Leo, um, as it was, I guess, kind of forefront in developing the instructions and then developing the Leo language to make the instructions easier to use. So ultimately, you don't need to know Leo instructions, but if you do, it will help you debug your Leo programs, because you can go into the build folder for your Leo program and you can see a program like this that's in Leo instructions that will be longer, but it will have the logic that the Leo language needs to do what it says it's doing. So here it's taking input R0. It's a public variable, and input R1, which is a private variable. This means the data will be visible without a view key, and this means the data will be encrypted or ciphertext without a view key. Um, So it's just doing an add operation. This is just math. It's taking register 1, which is a number, and register 0, which is a number, and one of them is private and one of them is public. It's adding them into register 2 and outputting that to the person who called it in a private register. So you might have some public value and a secret value, and you add it and you get a secret value back. And you can run that. The JSON has the key and address for deployment or development. It has the version and the name of the program, a license. It defaults to the MIT license because these guys are from Massachusetts, I guess. No, that's not true. I think it's just like a license they favor. Josh, do you know, was the Zexy white paper, was that published by University MIT?
It was from a bunch of different universities. Howard was at Berkeley at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was. Berkeley was coming to memory too. So yeah, it is. Let's see. Licensing is another topic altogether about software. It just means how the code is meant to be shared, and what you can do with the code if it involves profiting off of it or making changes to someone else's code, and then what rights you have under that license. So we'll get into the terminal, and then I'll show you the extension. For the extension, it would be easy to search for Leo. There's an unofficial and there's an official Leo one, but this VS Code Aleo and internal test, these are ones you can ignore. This one's official, but it's a test. I guess they're planning to launch a newer version. You want to use the one called Leo, the official extension, and it's very easy to install on this page. Right now, it's only giving me the option to uninstall or disable, but you would see that. You would see a guide or an overview. It includes these instructions I just went over with you on how to install the build tool. So we did this. We did Leo New Hello World, kind of. We called it Hello Leo, and we're in the Hello Aleo folder. So let's do Aleo run. You got to remember this is an Aleo code. If you run Leo run, it'll complain. So yeah, it's Aleo run, Aleo build. The building is what you have to do first, and that's the step I skipped. You can't run. I thought it would build and then run, but you want to do build, and then in the files, it'll generate a build folder, which contains some build artifacts. It's getting the universal setup, and for the first time, it'll do that, and it's basically syncing with the blockchain. Getting the other programs if you import programs, and doing things like this. So now you can do Leo. Let me scroll up here. Let me try one more thing. There we go. So you just give it the name of your function that you want to run. So it's executing that. 2 inputs, but 0 were provided. So let's give it 1 and 2. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Um, inputs. Okay, so we'll find out. I have to do some more research and look up the documentation for what the format is for inputs, the function inputs. You would think it would be something like hello and then one, two. Okay. So you need to give it the proper type. It can't infer that it's a U32 just by typing one. So that's another thing to remember. If you have a variable and it's a number, it gets the type of the integer appended afterwards. So this one U32 means one unsigned 32-bit integer, two unsigned 32-bit integer, and the inputs have to match up with the number of inputs we see here, the number of times the input command is used. And so to express the value 1, you do 1 U32, and it's expecting a U32 for the value 2. The output is 3 U32, which is correct. It added 1 to 2. And so that's what it looks like. It gives you a lot of feedback in the CLI. It'll be an advanced topic to develop a front end for something like this because it requires, I guess, more background in programming for the web browser. But we can do a lot with the command line. So we'll be doing examples that will show you output and execute in the screen here that you can call. Let's look at the other project, main.leo, and then we'll pause for questions. So here you can see it has a build folder already, has inputs this time, so we don't have to worry about what our inputs are. It picked 1 and 2. It gave a variable instead of register 0 and register 1, it gave it A and B. This is public. Things are private by default, so they didn't specify this is private. And the source code, it's a .leo file instead of a .aleo file. Now, this has syntax errors. I think some of that's being worked on, but it should still build. Let me try in the terminal.
The top.
Yeah. So Leo run lets you compile and build at the same time, but Aleo has to build and then run. That's a little nuance there. So while that's building, this is what they're talking about with off-chain computation. Like this is all happening on my computer, and it's going to make a proof, and that proof gets sent to the blockchain, and they don't know what the computer told me for some of the private values, but they can see that the computation was run correctly. So whatever the result was, is you can trust it. So here it did the same output as when we ran the other program, but this one is in Leo. You can see Leo doesn't have as much syntax highlighting support. It's saying it's failed to parse an expression here, but it looks like it's valid syntax because it ran. So that was my main frustration currently, and it's improving. I would say by next year they'll have Q1 next year they'll have this all worked out, and we'll be able to do some more advanced examples. So it's a little harder to program in Aleo, but you can get you can get by doing that. And then this Leo program, um, it can be difficult to know if your program's right because in this case, this program looks correct, but it has syntax highlighting errors. So let's see if I can. I don't actually see. So they show up here on problems.
Build a parse it, line 2, column 1. So it's from program. It's having a problem with.
Yeah.
I don't
It's,
wait. Is there? Okay, there's 2 opening brackets and 2 close. Okay. So whenever you run into a problem like this, you can go to the GitHub and see if there's an open issue where somebody already raised it, and if there isn't, you can create an issue and let the team know that it's happening.
and this could be. I think this plugin actually connects to a server that they update from time to time, so it might improve without you having to update your extension or Visual Studio Code. Um, what it's doing here is this program is the scope, which means everything inside this program is related to the program itself. And then there's things like import statements that you can get other programs that are like libraries. That means you can take resources from them and use them in your program. Like you can call their functions. Transition is a transition function. It's a type of function that affects the state of the blockchain. And then the other type of function is just regular function, and it's a helper function. It's meant to be called from a transition function. It can't call other functions, and it's basically to take a lot of logic out of your main function that does the work and returns the records and changes the application state and put it away inside another location in the program where it can you can have long uh, built out logic, but you can only call it with one line in this main function. If that's
Yeah.
if that's understandable.
Yeah, we're at an hour, so we should do questions. And if you just want to show the command to run a node, we were going to do with Vulture, but we decided not to because it's not a good time to rent space. You'd have to upkeep it. You'd have to keep updating it. And with testnet, you probably won't make any money. You'll probably lose money on it. So what we can show you is how to run a node off of like a laptop or a server or a desktop that you have at home, just
So
to get practice with doing it.
I watched. This is Pranav Saig at Aleo. This is his GitHub account, DOCD, and he made. This is just the fork. Okay, so he forked Aleo, the SDK, and made something called Slingshot. And Slingshot is a command that does a couple things. It starts a development node. Slingshot node start with your key, a private key, and it gives you a faucet, which means you can send credits to the address and just get credits. You can generate credits and you can explore transactions and things like this. You can deploy a program and execute a program. These are all experimental things. I'm not sure are currently deploy and execute are works in progress. I think he's the developer that's doing the work on that. And so you may find this useful. It's a fork of the Aleo SDK that has some more advanced features. You can see it's 38 commits ahead and 29 commits behind testnet 3. I think with Aleo, let me see if you could do. Yeah, I think they used to have a command to run the developer node here, and they just kind of hit it and made it work with build and run. But I don't have Slingshot. Let me clone it and see. Okay, I did that really quickly, but what I basically did was clone the repository. I accidentally put it in my home folder, so I moved it into this LeoLearners folder. Um, it's will list its directory. It's a cargo package, cargo install dash dash path current directory, and it'll get that, and you'll looks like it's getting it from Snark OS. So I think that's what I would recommend if you want to run a node to look into Snark OS. Um, I think these node start and things are a Snark OS command, but Slingshot was meant to kind of like have that same uh, testnet type node, but on your development environment. So you're the only one doing transactions on the network, and you can see in the logs the types of broadcasts your transaction will generate on the network. Um, this might be intensive to install. Like last time, we had a lot of time on it. So let's just ask questions, and if this finishes up, I can try to run some of these uh, commands. I can do alio new account, slingshot node start key, and take the account key and put it in there, and then I can pour some credits to an address from the faucet. He did that in a call yesterday. Was anyone else present on that call? I think Sula, you were. It was on the
Yeah, it was.
yeah. So hopefully we'll see more of those. This was the first time I had heard about Slingshot. I'll put it in the ebook eventually, and then encourage everyone to.
Download. That's frozen.
Yeah, it's.
Does anybody have any questions while we're waiting for that to download?
Not yet.
Well, I think we should probably end it there at an hour for the recording.
Okay.
Nobody has any questions. So when you guys go through this and try it, just post your questions in the LeoLearners chat, and then that way we can just answer them once. And then, you can try to install everything and just run the example code and see if you get an answer.